I have met the enemy, and he is me. We are indeed our own worst enemy. That quote comes from the famous cartoon character Pogo, which appeared over 50 years ago in newspapers across the United States. And this self-reflection that we are our own worst enemy is indeed one of the greatest truisms of life. And I came across a quote in the Pele Yoetz, the famous book of Mussar, written over 200 years ago in Bulgaria by Rabbi Eliezer Papo. The book Pele Yoetz, a classic. And in the beginning of the book, under the section called Ahavat Atzmo, listen to what he says in his second paragraph, in the second section of the book. He says, a person has the capacity to cause damage to themselves. Gorem ra'a le'atzmo. Ad she'ein shum sonei ba'olam. Your greatest enemy who hates you in the world, eino yachol lahara lo k'ma'aseh atzmo, cannot do as much damage to you as the individual is able of self-inflicting on themselves. The last couple of weeks, we saw one of so many examples throughout modern and ancient history. The case of Chaim Walder, such a talented individual whose suicide in the aftermath of what seems to be so many terrible acts of sexual predatory and violating people, young and old. And it boggles the mind how such a talented person who had such an impact on tens of thousands, if not millions, can ultimately be their own worst enemy, because indeed the great challenge we have as human beings is so often we are our own worst enemy. And I want to end and say that one of the classic examples we see of this is indeed Pharaoh in Egypt, the Pharaoh of Yetziat Mitzrayim. What an example of a person who was prepared to die, to have his firstborn of his own family die, to destroy his family, to destroy the entire Egyptian people, the entire society, to, in the face of plague after plague, this obstinate, arrogant hubris that no matter how destructive what is happening to him is, he knows better. He won't give in not once, warning after warning, 10 times. And then when he sees that they are confused in the desert, he runs after them, knowing ultimately that if he goes after this God which has brought him to his knees and this people, it'll ultimately lead to his death, as it does for him and indeed his entire army, and brings one of the great civilizations to its knees. Indeed, in life, we are sometimes can be our own worst enemies. And may we all reflect on the challenge that we have in life, not to be our own worst enemy, but to be the navigators and captains of our own lives, ultimately dictating, directing the path of our lives in the direction it ought to take. Shabbat Shalom.